Playas, how you doing? And welcome back to Playas Guide. This episode of Playas Guide, I am going to be exploring how inflation has had an effect on the retro game and video game collecting market. If you've caught some of the other videos where I analyze the markets for various consoles and collecting for them, the rare, the popular, and the underrated games, then you're going to be familiar with the layout that I'm going to use for this video. I'm going to go over to price charting so that we can use that chart for each console as a reference. If you haven't seen those videos, please go ahead and check them out and stick around till the end of this video because I think you're going to find something interesting here. I did a video recently, that's going to be linked at the end of this one, about some of the consoles that are great to collect for right now in 2022. I think you're going to see some of those consoles have regained some momentum because other people are recognizing that they are very good to collect for, and some of the other consoles are also sort of peaking and maybe dipping down. Let's go ahead over to price charting and take a look at what's going on. We're going to start with the NES, and we're just going to do some of these main ones here that you can see that I've clicked on already. I'm not going to talk about the Wii U. You want to find out more about the Wii U, subscribe to the channel. I'm going for a complete Wii U collection. I'm just 10 games away now, and I'm doing it on a budget of $100 a month or $20 a week. Okay, so we're not going to go into the details of specific games or anything here. This is what we want to look at right here, this chart. And we're going to take a look at, here's May of 2021, just a little less than a year ago. There's July, all right, June, July, August. So NES has been climbing up steadily over that time. It hasn't skyrocketed or anything, but it has been on a steady incline overall. But I predict that I think this year, you can already see there's a little dip here. It might bounce back up, but I think it's going to dip down a bit and then plateau probably around where it was about a year ago. And it's going to sit there for a while because although the retro gaming market is still hot, I do think inflation will cool things down a little bit. It's certainly not going to crash anytime soon. I think it's going to stabilize over the next year or two. That's my prediction. You've probably heard me say stuff like this before if you're subscribed to the channel and watching the content regularly. Let's move over to Super Nintendo. This was one that I talked about that didn't have a lot of momentum, at least not going into the beginning of the year and last year. And we could see that right here, July 2021. It had jumped, but it's climbing now. One of the things that we noticed before was that a lot of the really rare games, the popular games on Super Nintendo, have seen the greatest inflation. And we could see that right here just looking at the top games that pop up. Now, those aren't the most expensive games, but I mean, you're looking here, Super Mario RPG, $90. So I bet you if you go into a game store, or you're probably seeing it for like $100. Okay, so that's quite a bit. That one's never been really a cheap game, but you know, the staples of that collection have really held their value or gone up. I saw Super Metroid somewhere for, it was a bundle anyways that they were charging, and some of the rares I'm noticing now are starting to get a little bit of momentum. I don't want to say they're hot or anything, but they are being noticed a little bit more. Now, there's definitely going to be some games there that are still under the radar, and those are some ones you might want to keep an eye out for if you're into the Super Nintendo. Now, those games aren't necessarily good. That's the thing. Super Nintendo has a lot of great games, some really good RPGs, and those are the ones people are going for. N64 has taken a huge hit just recently. I think it's going to go down a little bit more. I think N64 is really going to cool off. You know, in another year or two, I think it'll start to go up again. I think the nostalgia factor, the nostalgia factor, I always talk about it. I think it's died off. I think it has really died off for the N64. That's what's happening here. And one of the reasons it's died off a little bit quicker than, let's say, the PS1, which is really hot right now, is because of the library size. And there's a lot of bad games on the N64. I'm sorry to say there's a lot of games that were out and didn't age so well. A ton of racing games and sports games that just don't really hold up today, unfortunately. And that shows. Also because it's a smaller collection, collectors are able to finish it a lot faster, even though the games have gone up quite a bit over the past few years, as you can clearly see here. Yeah, it's due for a bit of a price drop, which means GameCube is going to be hot, and you guys probably already know that because I know there are a lot of smart and intuitive collectors. I see your comments, and keep them coming. I love the great information of knowledgeable collectors that I have subscribed to this channel, leaving comments in this community and joining the Playas Guide Discord, also linked below. So yeah, here you go. Just like I said, GameCube is hot. That's because of the nostalgia factor. I predicted this a few years back when I started the channel, that it was going to heat up, and boy has it ever. I think it will start to slow down over the next year or two. Inflation will take a toll overall on collecting. It will help cool things down, but things like the PS1, PS2, GameCube you're not going to see them as affected as much because of how hot they are to collect for right now. And for Nintendo collectors, or that generation of the early 2000s, late 90s collectors, you're going to transition. The natural transition is from the N64 to either the GameCube or over to Sony. But we're going to see even Xbox now is starting to get recognized within the collecting communities, because it was a cheaper alternative before, not so cheap now. But taking a look at the Wii is still cheap, but it looks like over the past year it's gone up a little bit. About 15 to 20% on average games have increased for the Wii. And here's the thing with the Wii. There is over 1,000 games in the Wii library, and I would say just under 200. 200 or less are worth playing or checking out. And that's being generous even then. There's a ton of shovelware, there's a ton of bad games, there's a ton of broken shit people don't want to play. So even some of the rare games for the Wii are not that expensive. People don't want to collect a whole bunch of shovelware to sit on their shelves. The majority. There are people that do, and I will say that I find some of the unlicensed games on the NES to be quite interesting, and NES collecting for some of the oddities on the console really intrigues me. And the only other console from Nintendo to really kind of have that, N64 you could say with some of the variants, that is interesting. But I think the Wii has a lot of weird games and rare games. A lot of them are very bad, but it does look like an interesting console to collect for. For me, just too much space, too many games that I'm not going to play, too much money. There's just way too many games I'm not interested in collecting for the Wii. I think a lot of other people probably feel that way, or overwhelmed if you were to get into Wii collecting. The popular first-party games are definitely going to go up. If there's ones you want, or some of the obscure games, we've already seen a bunch of them skyrocket. But if there's any of those that you're looking for, pick them up now, because I do think we will see that to continue to increase in value for those games over the next few years. But yeah, overall, the Wii, I don't know, like, I certainly don't see people, if we're going into a recession, I certainly don't see people rushing up to buy shovelware. So this overall projection of the average price, I think, will go up. but it's not gonna skyrocket or anything anytime soon. But do expect that one to go up. So move over to the PlayStation 1. Like I said, PlayStation 1 is hot, just like the GameCube. The PlayStation 1, it has some very bad games on it too, just like the N64 that didn't age so well. But because it has a bigger library, it has a lot more good games, because there is a lot more games on the console. So there's a lot more worth collecting, whether you're a completionist or not. Right up here I see Silent Hill. So what comes to mind is some things that Nintendo didn't do so great at this time was the horror games, Final Fantasy RPGs. So those are games that we've seen going up in value, and that's definitely going to increase the price, as well as some of the flagship franchises that came out at that time. Some great action platformers available on this console. They had pretty much everything the N64 did too, for the most part, except for the Rare and Nintendo games, which were great and are the must-owns on the Nintendo 64 in my opinion. And yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff, some really weird games that came out on the PlayStation, and some different oddities. So it's a good one to collect for, and I think completionists will be kept busy for a while, and that will keep the price going up, as well as people who just want to own some of the flagship titles from that time, like the Resident Evils, Tomb Raider, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Twisted Metal. The list goes on. You guys are probably thinking, and you can name it in the comments if you want, games that I'm not mentioning here. But I don't want this video to be particularly long. I'm just going to touch upon a bunch of different consoles and what I think is going on right now with them. So next we got the PlayStation 2. So PlayStation 2 is really hot right now. This is a console that, if you haven't grabbed the rare games or the games that you really want, expect them to continue to go up. There is a bunch of sort of shovelware type, less popular games that came out around this time that you're also going to find on the Wii, and maybe even on the Xbox or Xbox 360. Those, I've even seen them starting to climb in value. PS2 was I don't know if I want to say undervalued, but not popular to collect for a long time. That generation of gamers have hit the nostalgia factor for this console, just like the GameCube. And yeah, this one is going up. PS3 still great to collect for. I don't see this one jumping too much. I think that if you are looking for some of these flagship titles I'm talking about, now is the time to pick them up if you haven't already. Same with some of the rares. I did a video on the rare games and collecting for PS3 as well, so check it out if you're not familiar with the PS3. It's going to be, in today's market, it's going to be kind of a slow build for it. I don't think it's going to shoot up or anything anytime soon. But yeah, if there's games you want, we could see that it is on the rise. That's going to be the next generation to hit the nostalgia factor. A lot of collectors have caught on to the nostalgia factor. Let's take a look at the Genesis. The Genesis, I'm a bit surprised by this. I thought it would have cooled off, but it has just stayed steady, building momentum. I think it's got to cool off a little bit, with the way inflation has gone. But the reason why, we're getting hit with the banks increasing the inflation is because people are still spending. So they're spending on games, and as the consumer market doesn't cool, we can expect the banks in North America and probably around the world to continue to raise interest rates. I know take a look at the housing market, and there are more houses on the market sitting there. That's for sure. But I do not see the prices really coming down. In fact, in some areas, the prices are still going up, which, you know, I mean, if that continues, those houses are going to continue to sit. And if that happens, we know where that's going to go. That there can only be, so many houses on the market sitting. You know, if people need to sell a home, they're going to have to take a bit of hit on that price. And I mean, I don't want to get too much into the global economics or even domestic economics, but if we take a look at a lot of stock prices and shares on the stock market, where they've gone, they've certainly gone down. I wouldn't say that it is a crash, but people are definitely taking out money and allocating it to different areas where they feel it is more important to them. Also, the one thing I do want to say about that too is that with where things are in the stock market, if you look at a lot of stocks, they are still up from pre-pandemic values. So I think what might happen here with retro games, and I'm certainly sure it will happen with the stock market, is things are going to cool right back down, maybe even a little bit below what they were before the pandemic. Now, for retro games, maybe not as much, but I think some of the consoles, like we've seen with the N64, it's definitely losing heat. It will bounce up a little bit and fluctuate, but a lot of these other consoles that are a little bit older are going to plateau or dip and start to cool off a little bit more. I don't think we're going to see that for PS1, GameCube, PS2 right now. They're very hot, especially with the nostalgia factor and collectors. So just expect those ones to go up. But in some other areas, we might see some stunted growth for some of the consoles like PS3 and Wii. And some of the older consoles may go back to prices closer to where they were pre-pandemic. So I don't talk too much about Dreamcast because I don't play Dreamcast. I don't know a lot about it. But it does catch my eye, and I have noticed that there are less and less Dreamcast games I'm seeing in game stores. I still see them there, but the selection is pretty small. Same with like the Master System. Not usually a large selection in most game stores, and that you know what, those consoles have a real following of dedicated fans, and that's one of the reasons we haven't seen that one cool off, because there's more and more people entering. I want to call it niche, but it's not quite that niche. But you know what I'm getting at. It's not everybody is a Dreamcast fan or collector. It's a smaller group, but there is less to go around. So in order to satisfy new collectors wanting to get into Dreamcast collecting or things like Master System, more so Dreamcast, because I see like people who like the Dreamcast love the Dreamcast, and this reflects that. Like, you know, I don't know, it might plateau, but as you see less and less of these games in game stores, there's going to be more of a demand for that fan base to own them. All right, so moving on to Xbox. We're going to wrap things up really soon here. We're going to cover Microsoft. Xbox here, if we look at, let's look at about a year ago, it had some momentum. It's going to continue to have that momentum because Microsoft has an established fan base now, maybe not as established as a Nintendo or Sony, but it's there, and those people are wanting to collect for the Xbox, which has been the cheaper alternative for the past while, And, you know, I've picked up a couple Xbox games here or there because of that. They were cheaper, and maybe even looked better. Cheaper and looked better on the Xbox. More and more people are recognizing that. Nostalgia factor is hitting Xbox. I think this one is going to heat up a little bit more. But again, doesn't quite have the same popularity that collecting for Nintendo or Sony does. So it may not get as expensive except for some of the very popular and more harder to find titles. So Xbox 360, probably one of the cheapest consoles to collect for. Although I do see the selection slowly starting to dwindle away at game stores. Less and less value bins where they're trying to liquidate these games. I see less and less of them in yard sales and thrift stores, but there still seems to be more 360 games. I guess you could say Wii too. There's still a lot of Wii games out there, and you do come across these more than most other consoles because they're not really popular to collect for right now. So that one will build some momentum, I think, but it's going to happen very slowly. The Xbox One, I don't really want to talk about this too much, but as you can see here, you know, now that it was the last generation console, like the PS4, PS4 still got some momentum behind it, but the Xbox One certainly doesn't. Those games are going to drop. You're probably going to be able to get some pretty good deals if you're into collecting for the Xbox One. That is it for this episode of Playas Guide. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. One small click from you makes a big difference. Anyways, that is it. I will be back with more collection analysis videos. I'm also going to be doing some videos about streaming, Wii U collecting, various new retro games and homebrews, and stay tuned for the retro gaming news. Until next time, I will catch you on the flip side.